Howdy, I'm Big Juicy, and I'm here in Panther City to go see the elephant. The white elephant, that is. But how do you tackle a tail that's as tall as Texas? One bite at a time. In the 1800s, American businessman and greatest showman P.T. Barnum was looking for the next big idea for his circus. He heard the legends of the sacred white elephants of Burma, and he had to have one. After a great deal of effort and $200,000, he purchased the white elephant, Tong Talong, from the King of Siam. Tong Talong is Siamese for Gem of the Sky. When the elephant finally arrived, the New York Times headline read, "The sacred beast is here." Unfortunately, white elephants really aren't white. At best, they're pinkish in color. This specimen was dirty gray with pink splotches on his face. When the public saw the animal, they were not impressed. They accused Barnum and his elephant of being frauds. Needless to say, it was a financial disaster. 3 years later, Tong Talong would die in a fire as the elephant barn burned to the ground. His memory would live on, though. The term white elephant came to mean an expensive, extravagant investment that ends up not being that useful after all. About that same time, a syndicate in New York City planned to capitalize on the hubbub about the white elephant by opening a saloon by the same name. It was so successful that they planned to open a chain of them in Texas. They opened white elephant saloons in San Antonio, Denison, and right here in Fort Worth. The Fort Worth location opened in 1884, right here at 308 Main Street. After a sneak preview on Leap Day, the saloon opened with great anticipation on March 1st. Those who laid eyes on the white elephant claimed it to be the finest saloon outside New York City. The White Elephant restaurant was connected to the saloon. The restaurant manager hired fishing boats from Galveston and New Orleans to provide fresh seafood. He also made arrangements with hunters around the country to provide fresh game. The extravagance was way too much to bear, though. The white elephant lived up to its name and became an expensive investment that wasn't that useful. Later that year, a group of investors associated with the San Antonio White Elephant Saloon purchased the Fort Worth location. They held on to it for about a year before selling it to local businessmen Jake Johnson and Alex Riddick, and the famous gunfighter and gambler Luke Short. Luke Short specialized in operating gambling halls. He worked at the Oriental Saloon in Tombstone, Arizona, with Bat Masterson, Wyatt Earp, and Doc Holliday. It was at the Oriental Saloon that he fell in love with the Chinese game Keno. Keno is a lottery-style game similar in some ways to bingo. What excited Luke about the game is the substantial advantage it gives to the house. Luke started running the gambling operation at the White Elephant and had a dream of making Keno great again, which he did. In the process, he made the owners of the White Elephant a lot of money. On February 8, 1887, another local gunfighter named Jim Courtright came to the White Elephant to get his hands on some of their profits. He asked Luke if he could be hired on as a special officer in the saloon. Short had sold his ownership the day before to pay some legal bills, but he was still managing the gambling hall. Luke Short declined Courtright's offer, saying, "Everyone's afraid of you, Jim. I can't have you in here getting all huffy and scaring everyone off. It would be bad for business." Courtright indeed got huffy and threatened to shut down the elephant's gambling business and have Luke indicted. After a few shots of whiskey, Jim was still agitated and wandered back to the White Elephant to speak with Luke. Jake Johnson, Luke's partner in the saloon, confronted Courtright and asked him to wait across the street in front of the shooting gallery while he went to go fetch Luke. Details of what happened next are a bit sketchy, but the story Luke Short told goes like this. "When I walked out with Jim and Jake Johnson, and we had some quiet talk on private affairs, I reminded him of some past transactions, not in a abusive or reproachful manner, to which he assented, but not in a very cordial way. I was standing with my thumbs in the armholes of my vest and had dropped them in front of me to adjust my clothing, when Jim remarked, "Well, you needn't reach down for your gun," and he immediately reached for his Colt 45 in his hip pocket. When I saw him do that, I pulled my Colt 45 from my hip pocket, too, and began shooting, for I knew that his action meant death. Luke's first shot hit Jim in his shooting thumb. Jim tried to switch hands, but Luke shot him in the heart and again in the shoulder. Courtright never fired a shot. His body fell into the shooting gallery, and he was dead within 5 minutes. Luke was arrested, but it was ruled self-defense, and the charges were dropped. Jim Courtright's funeral procession was the largest Fort Worth ever saw. He was buried in a borrowed grave in Pioneers Rest Cemetery along the Trinity River. Luke went on to other gambling halls, and he even had another gunfight in Fort Worth a few years later. He ended up dying of kidney disease, and he's buried in the nearby Oakwood Cemetery. In February of 1928, 41 years after the shooting, the Carwile family needed their cemetery plot back, and Jim Courtright's body was moved nearer to Luke Short's in the Oakwood Cemetery. After the publicity from the gunfight died down, Bill Ward took over ownership of the White Elephant. He kept Luke Short on to manage the gambling half of the business, but he had a vision to turn the establishment into the headquarters for local sportdom for Fort Worth. A year after the shooting, Ward held a meeting at the White Elephant, organizing the Fort Worth Panther baseball team. The next month, Ward attended a meeting at the White Elephant Saloon in San Antonio to organize the Texas League, of which the Fort Worth Panthers would be a charter member. The White Elephant would become synonymous with baseball in Texas and throughout baseball in general. In 1902, Giants manager John McGraw was asked what he thought about the Philadelphia Athletics. They were making headlines by buying the contracts for all the top talent in the National League. Insulted by the question, McGraw said, "The Philadelphia club will make no money. They have a big white elephant on their hands." Word got back to the Athletics owner, Connie Mack, and when the two teams met up in the World Series a few years later, Mack gifted a statue of a white elephant to McGraw. The white elephant soon ended up being sewn onto the Athletics uniforms and eventually became the mascot for the team. Even after several team moves, you can still see the elephant patch sewn on the shoulder of the Oakland A's jerseys. At the beginning of the Athletics 2002 campaign, the team lost some key players. Head coach Billy Bean used sabermetric nerd math to trade for under-the-radar players. The team ended up finishing first in their division with a 103-59 record. The curse of the White Elephant was broken. Years later, a blockbuster film starring Philip Seymour Hoffman debuted detailing the events of that season. The movie's name was Moneyball. In 1896, the White Elephant outgrew their building and moved a few blocks south to the 600 block of Main Street, the Winfrey Building. The new place was bigger and more extravagant than the old one, which burned to the ground shortly after the move, just like Tong Talong. Ward found himself overwhelmed with debts, and for the first time in the saloon's history, he was unable to open the doors in February of 1901. The saloon did reopen, though, but changes were made. In 1908, Bill Ward retired and sold the Elephant. The pressure of the temperance and anti-gambling movements were growing. Finally, in 1914, the White Elephant closed for good. Well, technically, in 1974, a saloon called the White Elephant opened in the Fort Worth Stockyards, 3 miles north of the old locations downtown. Every year, on February 8th, men will reenact the shootout between Jim Courtright and Luke Short in the streets of the Stockyards. So the next time you're taking in a baseball game or having a beer or a shot of whiskey, or even participating in a White Elephant gift exchange, Remember the contribution of Cowtown and Panther City to the lore of the white elephant. Maybe we can even add White Elephant City to the list of its nicknames. I'm Big Juicy, and this has been Big Juicy Tidbit number 16. Please subscribe to my channel to receive updates when new videos are posted. Also, visit my website at bigjuicytidbits.com to see additional content for each video. Remember, some people make history and some people make up history. Until next time, keep it juicy.